Have you ever stared into a mirror for just a moment too long and felt uneasy, as if the reflection staring back wasn't entirely you? What if I told you there's a mirror, a cursed mirror, that doesn't just reflect your face but reveals a darker version of yourself, one with sinister intentions? Welcome to the haunting tale of the mirror's curse. In this video, we're diving into the eerie legend of a mirror said to be older than memory itself. Those who've dared to gaze into it claim they saw something chilling, their reflection, but not as they knew it. It smirked when they didn't. It moved when they stood still. It knew their darkest thoughts, their hidden fears, and it whispered back. But here's the twist. The mirror's reflection doesn't just stay trapped behind the glass. People have reported losing control of their actions, as if the shadow version of themselves stepped out to take their place. The eerie part? Those who've come into contact with this mirror say they're never truly alone again. Think it's just a spooky story? Think again. This cursed artifact has left a trail of fear, mystery, and even destruction wherever it's been found. And tonight, we're uncovering the truth. Stick with me till the end as we explore the origins of this mirror, the lives it has shattered, and the terrifying reason it might still be out there, waiting. Are you brave enough to confront the reflection that might be hiding your own darkest secrets? Let's find out. We've all looked into mirrors, haven't we? They're everywhere, reflecting our image, our identity, our very essence. But what if I told you that some mirrors don't just show you? They reveal something darker, something evil. Welcome to the legend of the mirror's curse. In this video, we're going to uncover the sinister secret of a mirror that doesn't reflect just the face of its user. It reveals a twisted version of themselves, a version that might have malicious intent, a reflection that may not just stare back at you, but reach out with dangerous intentions. Are you ready to confront the mirror that changes everything you thought you knew about yourself? The tale begins long ago, in a secluded village hidden among the misty hills. The craftsman, a man named Elias, was known far and wide for his extraordinary talent. He had spent years perfecting the art of mirror making, creating pieces that were more than mere reflections of reality. His mirrors were said to capture the soul itself, giving back more than just what one could see on the surface. But Elias was never satisfied. He wanted to create a mirror that could reflect a deeper, hidden truth. And so, he worked day and night, obsessed with crafting a mirror that would not only show the outside world but the inside world, the darker parts of the soul that we dare not confront. One fateful evening, Elias finally completed his masterpiece, an ornate mirror framed in dark oak, engraved with strange runes and symbols that were said to hold ancient power. But as soon as he gazed into its surface, something went wrong. The reflection staring back at him wasn't his own. At first, he dismissed it as a trick of the light, a fleeting moment of madness. But the longer he stared, the more he realized. The figure in the mirror was him, but not quite. It had a cold, calculating look in its eyes, and something in its expression wasn't right. It was as if it was alive, watching him, waiting. From that night onward, Elias became obsessed with the mirror. He could hear it whispering to him, urging him to do things he would never have considered. The whispers promised him power. If only he would listen, if only he would do what the reflection suggested. The more he looked, the more he began to change. What he didn't know was that the mirror didn't just reflect his thoughts. It was slowly taking over his mind, warping his actions, turning him into something else, something dark, something dangerous. And when he disappeared, leaving nothing but the mirror behind, the curse began to spread, affecting everyone who dared to look into it. The first known victim of the mirror's curse was a woman named Margaret, a young bride in the early 1800s. Margaret received the mirror as a wedding gift, unaware of the evil it harbored. At first, she admired its beauty, but soon, strange things began happening. Every time she looked into it, she saw her reflection, but it wasn't her. The woman in the mirror had a cold, sinister smile, one that didn't match the joy in Margaret's eyes. The reflection would laugh quietly when she cried, and frown when she smiled. It wasn't long before Margaret found herself being drawn into the mirror's grip. One night, she woke up in front of the mirror, her body stiff and her eyes wide in terror. Her husband found her there, unable to speak, unable to move. It was as though her reflection had claimed her, leaving her a shell of the person she once was. The mirror was later found, abandoned in an old attic, its glass cracked but still eerily intact. No one dared touch it again. In the 1980s, a group of college students discovered the mirror in a rundown estate sale. To them, it seemed like nothing more than a quirky antique, something to add to their dorm room decor. Little did they know, they were about to open a door to unimaginable terror. At first, it was harmless. They'd joke in front of the mirror, make faces, and play pranks on one another. But it wasn't long before things took a darker turn. One by one, the students began to notice changes. Their reflections began acting independently, moving without them. One student reported seeing his reflection sneer at him, while another swore she saw hers blink in the opposite direction. The atmosphere in the dorm room grew tense. The students became paranoid, looking over their shoulders at every glance. They began to fear their own reflections. In one chilling incident, a student claimed that the reflection in the mirror had whispered, "I am you." That was the moment they realized they weren't just dealing with a mirror. They were dealing with something that wanted to take over their lives. But when they tried to destroy the mirror, it didn't shatter. Instead, it melted into an unnatural, black goo, as though resisting the destruction. It was as if the mirror didn't want to let go, and in the end, it left them with nothing but the haunting memories of the curse. Some scientists and paranormal researchers have tried to explain the curse scientifically. Could it be that mirrors are more than just objects that reflect light? Could they somehow tap into our subconscious, revealing hidden truths or even controlling our actions? One theory is that mirrors act as conduits between the conscious and unconscious mind. In some cases, when a person is vulnerable or mentally unstable, the mirror might reflect something darker, a version of the person's psyche that isn't bound by morality or reason. What if the cursed mirror doesn't just show a person's reflection but their true nature, one that's hungry for control? Others believe that mirrors have a connection to the supernatural. Some ancient cultures believed mirrors were portals to another world, a place where spirits could cross over into our reality. If this theory holds true, then the mirror's curse may not be just a reflection at all. It might be a gateway for something far darker, an entity that wants to leave the glass and take over your life. But here's the most chilling thought of all. What if the mirror is still out there, waiting for its next victim? If the curse has survived for centuries, passed from one person to another, who's to say it won't find its way into your life? Imagine, you're at an antique shop, and there it is, just sitting innocently on a shelf, waiting to be bought. You might not know it's cursed until you look into it. And when you do, what will you see? Will you see yourself? Or will you see something darker, something that wants to take over your life? And worse, what if your reflection comes to life and steps out of the mirror, leaving you trapped in its place? As you sit there watching, think carefully, because the next time you look into a mirror, you might not be the only one looking back. Story number 2. Have you ever heard a cry so silent that it pierces through your soul? A scream you can't explain, yet it lingers, pulling you into a world you were never meant to see? There's a ghost they call the silent screamer, an apparition not bound by the usual rules of the afterlife. She doesn't haunt with wails or whispers. Instead, she speaks in a silence so deafening, it can shatter your sanity. Legend says she only appears to those who can hear her muted cries. A mother's grief, a lover's despair, a child's agony. It's not the sound you hear. It's the emptiness that fills the space around you, drowning out the noise of the world. But here's the question. Could you hear her? Could you endure the silence that beckons her shadow to you? Tonight, we'll uncover the dark truth behind this chilling entity. Who was she? Why does she seek out certain souls? And what happens when you finally hear her cry? Stay with us as we unravel a story that could make even the bravest tremble. But beware, because the more you listen to her tale, the closer she gets to you. Are you ready to listen to what you cannot hear? She's listening. Are you? They say silence is golden, but for some, silence is deadly. The silent screamer is not your ordinary ghost. She doesn't haunt with loud footsteps or blood-curdling screams. No, her presence is far more sinister. She haunts through absence. Absence of sound. Absence of peace. Absence of escape. Our story begins over 300 years ago in a village long lost to time. Eliza was her name. A mother, a widow, and a woman whose life was marked by tragedy. She lived on the edge of the forest, her only companion a young son, her pride and joy. But tragedy struck one stormy night. While Eliza worked late in the fields, her son ventured into the woods, chasing after the sound of a faint melody. He never returned. Days turned into weeks, weeks into months, but Eliza never stopped searching. The villagers pitied her, hearing her desperate cries echo through the forest each night. They called her mad. They begged her to let go, but she refused. And then, one night, the crying stopped. Eliza was never seen again. All that was left was silence. But the silence wasn't the end of Eliza's story. It was just the beginning. The villagers built this shrine to honor her memory, hoping to appease her restless spirit. But the curse of the silent screamer only grew stronger. Soon, travelers passing near the forest began to report strange phenomena. They spoke of an overwhelming quiet. No rustling leaves, no chirping birds, not even the sound of their own footsteps. And then it would begin. A faint hum, barely audible. A sensation like a whisper brushing against their skin. Those who stayed long enough claimed they felt her presence. A shadow that seemed to move when no one was looking. And then they would hear it. A silent scream. Not with their ears, but within their minds. A cry that grew louder with every heartbeat until it consumed them. But what happens next is the true mystery. Those who hear her scream are never the same again. Some disappear without a trace. Others return, hollow and broken, unable to describe what they experienced. And some are driven to madness. The phenomenon of the silent screamer challenges everything we understand about hauntings. Most spirits are bound to specific locations, but she seems to be tied to people, those who can hear her cry. Why them? Theories vary. Some believe she's drawn to unresolved guilt or deep emotional pain. Others suggest she's a kind of spiritual echo, resonating with those who share her sorrow. But there's another theory, one far more chilling. What if hearing her scream is not random? What if it's a mark, a bond that ties you to her forever? Despite the danger, many have sought out the legend of the silent screamer. Paranormal investigators, thrill seekers, and skeptics have ventured into her territory, hoping to capture proof of her existence. One investigator claimed to feel a hand on his shoulder, only to turn and find no one there. His camera, however, captured a faint shadow standing behind him. Another team described sudden equipment failures, as though the very air was draining the energy around them. But the most chilling account comes from a group of hikers who stumbled upon the shrine by accident. They reported hearing a child's laughter, soft, innocent, and completely out of place. One of them claimed to see a figure in the distance, a woman, standing perfectly still, her face obscured by shadows. They ran, but one of them never made it out of the forest. His last words, caught on a recording, were, "She's here. She's here." The question remains, why does she scream? Is it a cry for help or a warning? And what happens to those who truly hear her? Some say her scream is a test of the soul, a reckoning for those who carry guilt. Others believe it's a curse passed down to anyone who dares to listen. But one thing is clear. The more you know about the silent screamer, the closer she gets. Are you listening? Or has she already found you? So, now you know the tale of the silent screamer. A legend, a curse, a mystery that refuses to fade with time. But the most chilling question remains. Is she real? Or is she just a story passed down to keep us away from the unknown? Maybe you feel safe behind the screen, thinking this is just another ghost story. But think back to the moments of silence in your own life. Have you ever felt a presence you couldn't explain? A shadow out of place? A fleeting sensation that someone, or something, is watching you? Perhaps the silent screamer is more than just a legend. Perhaps she's closer than we think. And perhaps you're hearing her now, in the spaces between my words, in the silence that follows this video. If you've felt her presence, if you've experienced the unexplainable, share your story in the comments. Let others know they're not alone. Or maybe you're too scared to speak. Either way, remember, the more you listen, the closer she gets. She's still listening. Are you? If you're intrigued by the mysteries of the unknown and love stories that send chills down your spine, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support keeps us digging deeper into the shadows of the supernatural. Have a theory or a story of your own? Share it in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And remember, the next time you find yourself surrounded by silence, don't listen too closely. Story number 3. Imagine this. Every tick of the clock brings you closer to an unknown, terrifying fate. You hear it. Tick-tock, tick-tock, the seconds slipping away. But what if every second, every moment, wasn't just passing time, but counting down to something horrifying? What if there was a clock, not just a tool to keep track of the day, but an instrument of fate? One that tells you how much time you have left before something terrible happens. This isn't some science fiction or creepy bedtime story. It's a mystery that has haunted people for centuries. A clock that ticks, not just through time, but through terror. And the scariest part? Once it starts counting down, there's no way to stop it. It doesn't matter what you do, where you go, or how fast you run. The clock is always ticking. And when the hands finally strike, you'll know. The terror has just begun. But here's the catch. You don't know what happens when it hits zero. Is it death? A curse? Or something far worse? Stay with me until the end of this video, and I'll take you through the chilling tale of a clock that doesn't just count time. It counts fear. You'll want to know how it all ends. Trust me. Because once you hear this story, you'll never look at your own clock the same way again. The countdown is already starting. Are you ready to face what comes next? Imagine waking up in the middle of the night. The room is pitch black, the kind of darkness that feels suffocating. You roll over to check the time, but the clock is still there on your nightstand, glowing faintly in the dim light. It's just a clock, right? But as you look closer, you notice something strange. The hands aren't moving normally. They seem to be stuck at a certain point, as if waiting. What do? You shake it, tap it, maybe even unplug it. But no matter what you try, it's not going to stop. The clock doesn't just keep time. It counts down, and that countdown? It's ticking towards something you can't see, something you can't understand, but you know it's coming. You take a deep breath, trying to calm yourself. But then the seconds feel longer, the minutes heavier. The countdown, it's not just about time. It's about fate. This isn't just a freaky coincidence. All over the world, stories persist of clocks that don't measure time like normal ones. These aren't your typical timepieces. They're cursed, designed to remind us that time itself is not just a simple flow, but a thread that binds us to a greater power. Legends speak of a clock that was created hundreds of years ago by an ancient sorcerer. The sorcerer was obsessed with manipulating time, not just to predict the future, but to control it. In his desperation to avoid death, he sought to create a clock that would count down until his worst fears came to life. But as it often happens with dark magic, he couldn't control it. The curse backfired, and now the clock exists to remind the world that some things are best left untouched. The moment the clock starts counting down, it's a sign. It marks the beginning of something inevitable, something that can't be stopped, no matter how hard you try. And this isn't just some abstract doom. Each tick brings an irreversible change. It's as if the very fabric of reality bends and warps around the passage of time. You can hear the clocks ticking in your mind, pulling you toward a destiny you never imagined. For those unfortunate enough to come into contact with the cursed clock, their stories are chilling. Some claim they felt an inexplicable weight settle over them as the countdown began. Their every step was weighed down by the pressure of the ticking hands. It wasn't just the passage of time that frightened them. It was the anticipation of what would happen when the clock finally reached zero. One such story comes from a man named Thomas, who found a dusty old clock in his grandmother's attic. He was just a kid, curious and eager to explore. Little did he know, this seemingly innocent clock was the beginning of his nightmare. He set it on his nightstand, and over the course of a few days, the clock began its countdown. At first, it seemed like a harmless quirk, until strange things began to happen. The walls of his house seemed to groan at night. The temperature would drop suddenly, and the shadows in his room grew unnaturally long. But it wasn't until the clock struck its final moment that the true horror revealed itself. In that instant, Thomas's family vanished without a trace. No one could explain it, but the clock, it had a history of doing just that. Every person who tried to stop the countdown was either driven mad or disappeared, taken by the very force they tried to defy. What is it about this clock? Why does it exist? Why can't anyone escape it? There are theories. Some say the clock isn't just measuring time. It's measuring your fate, tracking the moments until something inevitable happens. Others believe it's an artifact of an ancient civilization, one whose understanding of time and space was so advanced, it reached into the realm of the supernatural. And then there are the more chilling theories, suggesting that the clock is the key to something darker, something much older than humanity itself. Once you've set it in motion, you're bound to it. The ticking becomes a constant reminder of something you can't escape. No matter where you go, the seconds keep ticking. The hours slip by. The countdown is always there, in the back of your mind. The pressure, the fear, it builds and builds until you can't take it anymore. But here's the truly terrifying part. No one knows exactly what happens when it hits zero. Is it the end of everything? A release from the curse? Or does it unleash something worse, something more horrifying than anyone could imagine? Those who have come close to the clock claim to feel its presence in everything they do. The closer the countdown gets to zero, the more their lives begin to unravel. Relationships fall apart, strange occurrences happen, and the mind becomes consumed with fear. The only thing they can focus on is that relentless ticking sound. And it's not just people who encounter it who are affected. Anything that comes into contact with this cursed timepiece seems to be drawn into its countdown, its fate. In some cases, the clocks have disappeared from their owners' homes, only to resurface in places they could never have imagined, in circumstances they never expected. There are reports of people who claim to have seen the clock ticking on their wristwatch, or in reflections of mirrors, or even in the ticking of other clocks that seem to have nothing to do with it. It's as though the curse is spreading, reaching out to those who dare to come too close. Some say that the more obsessed you become with understanding the clock, the stronger its grip on you gets. The story of the cursed clock is not just a chilling tale, it's a reminder. Time, once disturbed, cannot be returned to normal. The ticking of this clock is not just about seconds. It's a ticking reminder of the dark forces that might lurk in the corners of our reality, waiting for the right moment to strike. But for now, there's still time left before we reach the final moment. The countdown continues. As we've seen, the cursed clock isn't just an object, it's a force, a reminder of the mysterious and terrifying powers that lie beyond our understanding of time. With every tick, every second that slips away, we are drawn closer to a fate we can't escape, no matter how hard we try. Whether it's a curse, a warning, or something far darker, the clock remains a haunting symbol of the price we pay when we tamper with the unknown. But here's where it gets interesting. You've made it this far, and now you know about the cursed clock, the terror that lies within the ticking hands. But do you really know what happens when the clock strikes zero? What happens to those who dare to let it run its course? The countdown isn't over, and just like you, the clock is watching. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the chilling world of the cursed clock, make sure to hit that like button. But don't stop there. Subscribe to the channel and ring the bell so you never miss another dark mystery like this one. Share your thoughts or any strange encounters you've had with time in the comments below. Who knows, maybe the clock is watching you now. Stay tuned, because you never know what horrors lurk just around the corner. And remember, the countdown, it's always ticking. Until next time, keep your eyes on the clock. You might not like what you see,